Hello, this is Shauna. Thank you for tuning in to Jump In Precision. Today, I want to talk about your reconciliation to your marriage and how it may affect your children, how you should try to prepare for the return of your spouse. Uh, let's see, excuse me. The return of your spouse or a new dad if you have a spouse that's passed away or something of that nature, and now you are going to be introducing them to a new dad or a new mom. Um, but this is actually interchangeable. But I'm going to be speaking towards for women with children, and they're expecting a husband or they're expecting their spouse to return, and he's been out of the home for a certain amount of time, or maybe you are reconciling uh, for whatever reason the gap has been there, whatever reason the distance has been there. And so I took some notes, and I'll just read from there, and then we'll talk about it. So, the first thing I wrote down is, well, I think the title is going to be Tell Them No. But anyway, I wrote, are your kids ready for their new or their old daddy? Um, when I say old, of course, I don't mean elderly or necessarily, but what I do mean is the dad that they already experienced, and things might not have gone so well, but God is calling you back to that relationship, back to that marriage, back to reconciliation, or a new dad versus saying that they are coming into your family to make a blended family uh, for whatever reason. And we won't get into the details of that. And the reason I said, are they ready? Um, is the first thing that I want to mention is your household rules. Sometimes when we're waiting on, say, let's take one scenario. Say you are divorced and the father is calling you back to reconciliation with your husband, and you have children together, and the children have been with you. Um, or vice versa, whoever the child or children have been with during that separation. You are going to want to not only just spend time praying about how you will receive your spouse back or how they will receive you back, but you also want to incorporate prayer and quality time, teaching and training your children to receive either their new father, their stepfather, or what have you, or their father their biological father that has been out of the home for a season or a few seasons. So if that's the case, things like bedtime, um, or curfews, or anything that's on a time limit, you might want to start incorporating those things ahead of time, giving them, because sometimes, especially speaking as a mother, sometimes mothers are so relaxed with their children. They let their children come in and out of their bedroom whenever they want. They let them get on their phone. They let them go into their purse, or they let them go into the fridge and go in and out of the kitchen whenever they want. They let them come in and out of the house when they want, because we just tend to have that comfortable relationship with our children, excuse me, that men don't normally have. They don't seem to have. So if you notice, say you're on the phone and you're talking with your future spouse, or you're talking to your mate who you are reconciling with or whatever. If they happen to hear on the phone, you're talking or whatever, and they hear your kids in the background and they say, "What time is it? Isn't it like 8 o'clock?" And say they're young children or whatever. And you say, "Yeah," and he says, "The kids are still up?" Or "Your kids are still up?" With tomato, tomato. That is your clue that that's something he will disapprove of. So when you pick up on those clues, don't wait until they become an actual part of the family or they come back to the household and things are just too relaxed. So when you pick up on that clue, all you have to do is just start saying, once you get off the phone, you can just say, we're going to, we're going to start having a more structured bedtime, or we're going to start having a more structured meal time, or we're going to start having more structure in our outing time. Or you know what, I want you guys to start knocking on my bedroom door before you come in and out. Don't just come in when you get ready. Those kinds of things. If we start to implement those rules and regulations before the person returns, before the spouse returns, or before the new person comes into the family, it won't be like they're the bad guy. It won't be like they're the big bad wolf. And it won't be like you're losing them to your mate if you start to implement those things in the beginning. Because I hear some women saying that they're waiting for their spouse, or they're waiting for whoever their marriage is going to be, whoever the Lord is going to put them together with, and their kids, they have children, and their kids are ready for a dad. They're ready for the family environment with a 2-parent household. But we have to keep in mind that the new dad, or the apologetic dad who might be returning, they're only going to play sugar daddies, for the lack of a better word. They're only going to play sugar daddy for a certain amount of time. They're only going to buy the gifts and the outings and the whatever for a certain amount of time, because in the beginning, everybody has their best foot forward or their false foot forward. So he's not going to be coming into a new family, or he's not going to be returning to his old family like a bull in a china shop. He's going to come in smooth. He's going to come in with laughter. He's going to come in with gifts, maybe. He's going to come in willing to compromise. But as he gets more comfortable and things get more settled, then he's going to start to implement rules of his own. He's going to start to say, okay, I don't like this, I like this. I don't want this to happen, I do want this to happen. I'm not going to tolerate that, so forth and so on. So you need to get prepared for those types of changes. And it's best to start implementing them before he arrives or before he gets back. Another thing that we can look at is the fact that he is the head of the household. So when you're looking at when you're looking at a modern relationship, and both people could be in the Lord, could not be in the Lord, or whatever, and they both consider themselves equals, and they both do what they want, and they say what they want, and they act how they want, so forth and so on, then you're not prepared for when you say you're a teenager, you have a teenager, and the teenager wants to go over to a sleepover or whatever the case may be. You may have said, sure, yeah, you can go over to the sleepover. But what happens when your husband says, wait a minute, did you just tell her she could go sleep over someone's house? And you say, yeah. And he might say, I don't approve of that. No, you cannot go to a sleepover. You can go over to the party, but you have to come home at night. You can't sleep over somebody else's house. I don't approve of that. that child or that teenager or whatever the case may be is going to be angry and resentful toward the new father or the returning father because they haven't been taught that it's the parents and then the children, that it's the husband, the wife, then the children. They haven't been taught that the husband is the actual head of the household and he has the final say. So they're going to be looking at you like, Mom, but you already told me that I could. And then you're going to have to deal with the fallout of the veto. So we want to look at those kinds of things when we're expecting a man to enter into our home as the head of the household, as the parent, as the co-parent, as the dad, stepdad, foster dad, whatever the case may be. We have to prepare for those things. Let's see here. What else did I put? The enemy will use your children to cause a rift or a discord in your household. Whether the kids are both parents' biological children or just one of them, or you're bringing a blended family, or whatever the case may be, because there's a lot of different scenarios. But they all will come to that same head, that same battle. The enemy's just waiting, because if he can destroy the home, if he can destroy the marriage, if he can destroy the parent relationship, then he can get the kids. He can get the kids, which is another reason why the father hates divorce. Now, don't misunderstand me. I am not coming down on anyone who has gotten to that point and beyond, because we know that the father specializes, and he even puts divorced people back together. He puts separated people back together. Whatever his will is what will prevail. So there's no problem there. But at the same time, when you have, say you're a husband and you have a child and your wife is deceased, and you're a female and your husband is deceased, and you have 2 children and he has 1 child, or whatever the case may be. Now God is bringing together a blended family. And when it comes to bringing together a blended family, it's more challenging, because everybody needs to make sure that everybody's being treated equal, everybody's being treated fairly. One spouse's biological child is not getting away with more than the other spouse's biological children, and so forth and so on. So always when it comes to a blended family, always when it comes to children that are not your biological children, it's always an avenue or a door that Satan will at least knock on. If he finds that he has a foothold, then he might just kick the door in. So we have to be cautious and make sure that we have rules and regulations in place, that we have a clear understanding of who the head is. We have a clear understanding of how to operate. Another thing that you want to clue in on, and you want to start working with your children with, is honor, respect, and obedience of the parent. Scripture tells children to obey their parents in the Lord because it's right. Not because they're right, but because it's right. Scripture tells them, honor your father and your mother, which is the first commandment with the promise that it may be well with you and you will live long on the earth. Scripture says that we are to honor the word of our Father, that we are to that a wise son listens to the counsel of his father, listens to the correction of his father, that a wise child listens to the correction of their mother, and so forth and so on. So he gives quite a few scriptures about how children are to respond to their parents, be it biological, step, or other. So if you have been allowing your children to dishonor you, talking back, bad attitude, um, asking you why they have to obey you, why they have to do a certain thing, it's not my turn, so forth and so on. Or even more unruly behavior of disrespect to you, then you're going to need to reel that in. Take less time, because when I'm looking on the YouTube channel and I'm looking at some of the people and they're talking about kingdom marriages and God ordained marriages and so forth and so on, I see a lot of people standing for the wife, standing for the husband, but nobody is standing, figuratively speaking, nobody is standing for the children. No one is standing for the teenagers. No one is standing for the blended family dynamic that comes with, I'm waiting on God to give me a husband, or I'm waiting on God to reconcile my marriage, or I'm waiting on God to send me a husband or a wife, even though I already have children, so forth and so on. Because sometimes we have children and we've never been married, and that's your life. That's not the issue of whether you've been married and you have children, be it man or woman. The issue is, and the thing to consider is, are you teaching them biblical principles about how a child is supposed to behave in the home? Are you teaching them biblical principles about honor, respect, obedience, their attitude, their response, their verbiage, smacking their lips, rolling their eyes, breathing hard, sighing, whining, complaining, those kinds of things that children automatically do if not checked, automatically participate in if not corrected. And scripture tells us you want to, in addition to this message, you want to implement discipline and rules and consequences for their behavior or their lack thereof. You want to start implementing those things, even if you're starting late. They might be 14, they might be 12, they might be whatever, still in your house, whatever the case may be. It's never too late to start implementing the rules, respect, honor, and telling them what thus said the Lord about their behavior and how they are to conduct themselves. It's never too late for that, because what happens is, if you allow the children to run the household, if you allow the children to be disrespectful and dishonorable, not only is God going to hold you responsible, but it's going to destroy your marriage. It's going to destroy your relationship. And it will destroy the parent-child relationship and the husband and wife relationship. Another thing that we have to think about, that I wanted to bring up, is that when you're considering to get married to someone, say you have children out of wedlock, and the person that you're planning to marry doesn't have any children, or they have children, tomato. This is where I'm going. As you evaluate, Lord, is this my spouse? Lord, is this the one you're telling me to stand for? Lord, is this the one you're sending into my life? Is this my husband, or is this my wife, or whatever the case may be? You also need to do the practical evaluations. Do they have the same things that I have? Do they have the same morals that I have? Do they have the same standards that I have? How do they feel about verbal conversation? How do they feel about letting the children express themselves? How do they feel about whether my teenage son or daughter has a job or doesn't have a job? How do they feel about schoolwork and buckling down? How do they feel about vacations? How do they feel about the practical things that have to do with children and blending families? You have to look into that along with prayer to say, God, is this my husband? God, is this my wife that you're sending me? Because let me tell you something. I don't care how spiritual you are, and I don't care how holy you are. I don't care if you think that the angels carried your husband or wife and dropped them on your doorstep. Practicality will play a part in the success or the failure of your marriage. It will play a part. You cannot overlook it. This is wise counsel that I've been sent to give. Those things will play a part. So if you believe in spanking and your partner doesn't believe in spanking, there's going to be a problem. If you don't believe in spanking and your partner that's coming into the dynamic believes in it, that's going to be a problem. Because you're not going to just take it as them being disciplined, as your children being disciplined. You're going to take it as abuse because you've already decided that you don't agree with that. If you don't agree with making your children keep their word, for example, I'll give you a TV example. Back in the day, there used to be this TV show called The Brady Bunch. And this woman was coming into the relationship with her 3 daughters, the man with his 3 sons. Now, most people know this sitcom, but I'm just painting a picture for those of you who do not. So in the blended family, the oldest son was old enough to drive. And he did something he wasn't supposed to do, so they grounded him from driving the car for a week or 2 weeks or something of that nature. So what he did, he thought he would be clever and borrow the neighbor's car. So when they called him on the carpet, he said, "Dad, you told me not to drive our car for 2 weeks." And his father was like, Are you trying to tell us that you didn't understand what we were talking about? And he said, "All I know is what you said. You said not to drive our car." So what happened is the dad said, now this is his biological son, the dad said, "Okay, Greg, if that's what you're trying to tell me, that's what you thought we meant, is only don't drive our car. I'm just going by what you said, Dad." He said, "Okay, so what you're saying is you would like to live by exact words?" And he said, "Yeah, that would have made things more clear." So he said, "Okay, from now on we will live by exact words." So sometime, a couple days pass by or whatever, and he gets his driving privileges back. So he goes out and he comes into the house and it's late, and one of his brothers says he promised to take them to some kind of contest, but he made a date. He made plans to take out a female, and his dad made him cancel it. He said, "Can you take him because I made a date?" He said, "No. Did you give your word that you were going to take him to the contest?" And he said, "Yeah, but that was before I made plans with whatever the female's name was." And he said, "You have to take him because you said you wanted to live by exact words." When he came home the next night or 2 nights later, he was supposed to wash his mother's car. It was late. He was tired. He wanted to go to bed. His father said, "You need to go out and wash your mother's car because you told her you would get to it today." He said, "Yeah, Dad, but it's late. Can I just do it tomorrow?" "No, because you said you would do it today, and we're going by exact words." So after a few of those seriously inconvenient reminders that you wanted to live by exact words, so this is what you have to do. He got the clue. And when it comes to us and our relationships and our combining or whatever, we have to train our children as well to live by their word, to do what they're supposed to do what they're asked to do, and to accept responsibility. And even if that means discipline, grounding, taking their phone away, or whatever you and your husband or wife have come up with as punishment or discipline. But when you're the single parent and you haven't been implementing any of these things, and you've been making, you've been making concessions, if you will, to let him slide here and to let him slide there. And okay, well, just do it tomorrow. Okay, well, you can do it later, or whatever the case may be. That might not be okay with your future spouse. That might not be okay. So don't overlook, I'm just waiting, I just want a husband, or I just want a wife, and overlook the practicalities of living together, the practicalities of running a household, because those things will come up, and you will be astonished how much trouble it can cause if you haven't already started to implement these things. You have to start saying, listen, when God does bless us with a dad, or when God does bless you with a new mommy or mom, or however old the kids are, because you might not talk like that, they're going to want different things. They're going to have different expectations, and you're going to have to be okay with that. You might have to be okay with a different curfew. You might have to be okay with them expecting more from you out of your schoolwork. You might have to be okay with knocking on the bedroom door before you enter, asking permission, can you go into the fridge and get something to eat? You would be surprised at the differences of how people raise their children and how people want to raise their children. You would be surprised at how drastically different people think and people operate when it comes to their children. Some people are battling how they were raised, and now they're flipping the script. You might be involved with a man who was abused when he was growing up, so now he's jumped out of the frying pan and into the fire. Now he doesn't want to discipline his children at all because he was abused as a child. See what I'm saying? So that's just a small example of how different things can be based upon, one, you're bringing two people together that grew up totally different. One of you might have grew up in the country. One of you might have grew up in the city. One of you might have grown up with 10 children. The other one might have grown up an only child. One of you might have been the oldest. The other one was the baby. Those dynamics will make a difference. Trust me when I tell you. They will make a difference, because the oldest child, I happen to be one, is always the boss. Period, point blank. And for those of you out here who are the oldest child, you know what I'm saying. We run the show. We're the boss. We're the ones who are held to be responsible for stuff, even if it's not our responsibility, so forth and so on. And the babies out there of the family, they can all relate. They get away with the most. They get the most lenient set of parents. You can have 10 kids, and you can best believe the oldest 3 are going to have a different experience, remember a different way of growing up than the last 3. And especially the very last one. That very last one practically raises his or herself. So all these different dynamics that enter into your relationship will be a factor, and it will be very important for you to evaluate them and determine what can you live with and what can't you live with. What are you willing to compromise and what aren't you willing to compromise? Because at the end of the day, the thing that you try to overlook, brush off, well, okay, well, it's not that bad. Well, I didn't agree with that, but oh well, because you want the man more than you want the life. Because you want the woman more than you want the life. So you pretend or you try to overlook things that really irk you or really irritate you. And then later on down the line, it's explosive. So you want to pay attention to that. Another thing, if you have a returning spouse because you got divorced or you're separated or whatever the case may be, and this spouse has damaged the family, damaged the children, abused the children, or hurt the family in different ways or whatever the case may be, you have to have a chat with them when they're returning back, because sometimes they will feel like, well, I'm the parent, they owe me the respect. But not when you're the one who's damaged the family, not when you're the one who's hurt the family. Then you have to come in humble. You have to come in prepared to make amends. You have to come in prepared to wade the water. You can't just come in like a bull in a china shop because you're the dad or you're the mom and show me some respect. That's not how that works. If you have injured the family, injured the children, hurt the children, disrespected the children, there's some ground to be gained before you get back to normal. And sometimes back to normal can't be the old normal. It has to be a new normal. Because everything may be forgiven, but it's not forgotten. Everything may be forgiven, but it's not forgotten. And let's face it, our old ways are a lot easier to return back to than it is to practice our new ways. Our old attitudes are just crouching at the door. Our old way of speaking to other people is just crouching at the door, waiting to jump out and assault someone, hurt someone, talk smart to someone, talk down to someone, so forth and so on. So if you are the returning parent, please keep that in mind, that there is some ground to be gained, that you need to move slowly and smoothly until the Lord restores relationships, restores verbiage, restores activities. Sometimes when you're the returning spouse and you've been the one in the wrong, sometimes as the returning spouse, you don't ever come back to the way it used to be. Especially if your children are teenagers / young adults or whatever the case may be. You might have to come back not on a friendship level, but something like that. You might have to come back on a more willingness to make it work. Whereas before you left, before the damage, before the abandonment, before the abuse, they were more submitted to you. They felt like you had more power over them. But now that you're out of the house and you're returning, you're going to have to evaluate the fact that you left in the wrong way. Things went down backwards before you left. How do I need to come in, Lord? How do I need to come in for this to be restored? How do I need to come back into this household? What is the new normal? What is the new normal? Let's see here. Um, if you are thinking that the Father sent you this man or the Father sent you this woman, and you have to evaluate, you have to be sure. You have to be sure. Because these other things, these other practical things that I mentioned earlier, they will supersede the spiritual part. They will be the tear in the veil. They will be the thing that divides the household right down the middle. And sometimes we're unwilling to realize that maybe God didn't send me this man. Maybe God didn't send me this woman, because we just have too many things that are not working. And we can't overlook them. Please don't overlook them. When you see red flags, when you guys raise children differently, when you think about raising children differently, when you think about handling teenagers differently, when you think about what religion you are embarking upon, and you grew up Catholic and your mate grew up Mormon, or you grew up Christian and your mate grew up Pentecostal, or whatever the case may be. And now the kids are torn. You don't know whether you're trying to get them to be a Christian. The other one don't care if they even participate. But yet, the parent that doesn't care, the enemy is using on a continual basis to destroy what the other parent is doing. So say you're the one and you've been training your children up in the way that they should go, and you are a seasoned Christian, and you think that the Lord has sent you this man who is a baby Christian. And you already have children, and this is how you've been training your children. You can best believe the enemy is going to use that man against those children to harm you quick, fast, and in a hurry. Pretty soon he'll be saying, let's go on an outing. And it happens to be on the day that you go to church. And it's not per chance. He's doing it on purpose. Because when you two are not moving at even a similar pace, you don't have to move exact same pace, but even if you're not moving even remotely close to the same pace, and one is falling short, one is falling back, that will be the one that Satan uses. Well, Dad said he wanted to take us to the park. Can we go to church next week? Dad said, can we do Bible study later? He wants, he's going to take us out for ice cream if they're young, or whatever the case may be. So don't think that asking God for a wife, asking God for a husband, that the spiritual part of that is all that you need to consider. Because you couldn't be more wrong. You couldn't be more wrong. That's not all you need to consider. So keep that in mind. Always watch, always pray. And figure out what the dynamics should be for your household, and what kind of things compatibly you have going between you and that man, or you and that woman, and the children in between the two of you. Their ages, their skills, everything, all of that matters. But if you don't train them up in the way that they should go, if you don't start making rules and regulations and guidelines and boundaries, your children are going to view your spouse as the enemy. Your children are going to feel abandoned by you because they're going to feel like, okay, you're choosing this woman or this man over us, and we've been with you all this time. So just keep that in mind. Like I said, be prayerful, be watchful. If it's a red flag, assume it's on fire. If you see red flags, assume it's on fire. Remember that your soul is the most important one you'll ever save. You cannot win the world and lose your own soul. And that means spiritually or financially or business-wise. You cannot win the world and lose your own soul. Make sure you're in line and bring others with you. But do not sacrifice your own soul for the winning of others. Enjoy your evening. Try to have the best evening that you can, or day, whatever time you view this video. And I'll see you next time.